Welcome back to the DoDump. I'm your host, Killer Bird Boy. Let's get raw. The Pokemon Twitter has been super interesting these past few days, with a beautiful back and forth between the Game Freak apologists and the Game Freak haters. Let me just say I love the terms that this community has been throwing around. Game Freak apologist gets destroyed! Game Freak hater gets destroyed! Damn guys, I didn't realize this was a leftist versus Ben Shapiro situation going on with all these people getting annihilated. There's a hell of a lot to unravel here, so I'm gonna cover both sides of the story, but I ain't no journalist, so I will give my opinion here and there. A month ago, Famitsu had interviewed Game Freak's Masuda and Amori about the Sword and Shield games after E3. During the interview, the Game Freak reps had stated that they could not port over the Sun and Moon models into Sword and Shield, and it proved a lot more difficult than they originally thought. This was brought up in a Reddit post a few days ago that this would mean that Game Freak needed to rebuild all the models from the ground up, since it wasn't just an easy port from the 3DS game. Seems like kind of basic news. Why are we talking about this now, a month later? And why the hell did this post explode to the point that it got its own Polygon article? Alright, well, to talk about how we got to this point, we gotta recap. We gotta go all the way back to the original outcry about bring back the National Dex, when they was originally announced during E3 that all the Pokemon would not be available in the Galar region, causing many to be very frustrated. Basically, Game Freak's reasoning for not including all the Pokemon in Gen 8 was things such as insane difficulty of balancing 800 plus Pokemon, working on quality animation, story and characters, as well as new gameplay features like Giganta and Dynamaxing, and the wild area, which is a very nice departure from Sun and Moon's very linear island design. It was then the National Dexter's mission to debunk absolutely everything stated that was a reason for not including the National Dex. A lot of it actually good criticism, but some that could be seen as nitpicking, but for the reason stated before, that things were cut in order to work on said aspects like quality animations, then you can see where people are coming from. And that was the thing that probably stuck out the most initially, the quality animation. The community ended up using spite at Game Freak, saying, nah, you ain't using that excuse on us, nah. If you look closely at some of the animations, it looks like this was used from X and Y 6 years ago. This created a snowball effect, and people started looking past just the animations themselves and looking at the models, and people started pointing out that they look the exact same models with just reworked textures and lighting brought all the way again from the old 3DS game. The evidence was now seen as fact, and Game Freak was marked incredibly lazy in cutting a bunch of corners using the same animation, models, and textures for the majority of Pokemon. Yet with all this corner cutting and the excuse for not putting in the National Dex to work on this stuff, they still weren't able to do it? No. Then the conversation went even further than that. Now instead of just talking about things aesthetic like models and animations, they started talking about things like gameplay mechanics and the decline of the series as a whole, removing post-game content like the Battle Frontier, as well as removing Mega Evolutions along with the entirety of the Pokedex. And some people are saying that RPG elements will be removed from Sword and Shield, such as breeding as well as IVs, but this is yet to be confirmed, and I can understand why that would be such a pain, because that is just removing actual core elements that makes Pokemon. With all the tension rising, people started to take sides that this game was an absolute disaster and that Game Freak was lazy and incompetent, or that this game looks amazing and that Game Freak knows what they're doing, and these things take time and people don't actually understand what they're talking about in terms of game design and animation. With the combatant set, it's time for a death battle! By the way, the majority of people referenced during this whole thing aren't just Game Freak apologists or Game Freak haters. Those are really silly terms. There are people that enjoy the games but have nitpicks, or are excited for the games and have nitpicks like me, or people that think this game is an absolute disaster but still have things that they think is a step forward in the series, such as the wild area, for example. Anyways, back to the original Reddit post of the Famitsu article. Like I said, this thing blew up on Twitter and got its own Polygon article, again pointing out something that happened a month ago. But now you can see why this happened, because a month ago we weren't saying that Game Freak is so lazy that they reused everything from 6 years ago and still wasn't able to put in all the Pokemon in the game. I mean, just on the tweet that the guy pointing out the freaking Reddit post, that dude got blasted. People clowning on him, posting things like a Pikachu body plug just to say that Masuda wanted him in his office by 3. It's pretty funny, but like, it's a little degenerate, I'm not gonna lie, especially with that people say on Twitter and how toxic things can get. A little postscript edit, I went back to that feed to try to get some insults that people had posted and show some of the crazy clowning insults that they put on the dude, but the post got deleted. and I was gonna say something like, you know, man, don't like harass people. And then I found out that the reason why the dude deleted it was because there was some crazy accusations about him soliciting photos to minors. I'm not gonna get into that. I'm not Omni, so you know, that's his thing to cover. We're just going to talk about the games here. Anyways, people rejoice saying, ha, take that, Game Freak haters. They actually did build the models from the ground up. But then people took to saying that, I'm not too sure about that. Let's think about it for a second. The possibility that Game Freak made every single model in the game from scratch and made it look the exact same as the old models. I know it's the same Pokemon, but still, putting the same rig and the same animations from the ground up seems like a huge missed opportunity to not improve on the old animations, and also is just a blatant, really ridiculous and bizarre choice for a production studio to do. There's a really good Twitter thread by LuTube, it'll be in the description, where he points out a lot of the misconceptions about this whole thing. So from the move from Gen 5 to Gen 6, the DS to 3DS, we went from 2D models to 3D models. This was a lot of work for Game Freak, so they ended up commissioning a separate studio called Creatures Inc. to do a lot of the models. They had an insane amount of manpower, and it still took them 3.5 years to get all these models together for the game. Creatures Inc. went on to making Detective Pikachu and Poke Park, in which they had access to all the models and the rigs, and reused it for those games as well. Since Game Freak moved forward with the franchise with the rest of the 3DS titles, as well as Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, they did all those entries alone without the help of Creatures Inc. And this leads us to assume that the models that Game Freak received from Creatures Inc. was highly polygonal and way more developed than ever needed to be for the 3DS, and got downscaled once it was put on that console, but still could be used throughout the years all the way up to the Switch. Then all Game Freak had to do was update the textures and even maybe the shaders depending on the game. And this is shown, things like Metapod, for example, was shown to have different textures, as well as this version of the Let's Go Pikachu and the Sword and Shield Pikachu having a different facial structure. Again, those are just textures though. It could still be the same model. There's a lot of people saying that this still doesn't mean that it's debunked and Game Freak made all those models, but the fact that they had that much manpower and needed to commission a whole separate studio back in the X and Y days and still went on through development for the rest of the Pokemon games since is a little hard to believe, especially now that Game Freak's development team has been split in two with the development of their new IP Town. The original Famitsu article was right though. It's not a simple drag and drop. They can't just take things from Sword and Shield and plop it in. Maybe they can with the animations and the rigs, who knows? If it was a simple drag and drop like people are thinking, then obviously we would have all the Pokemon. Why would they not include it knowing the backlash that's included? Oh my god, you're so lazy, Game Freak. This Pokemon generation is expected to have over 100 new Pokemon join the decks, which is the most entries in a Pokemon game for a new region since Black and White 9 years ago. Game Freak is the one that's making all these new models, as well as the possibility for Gigantamaxing, which creates a new model. So they're still under a lot of work. And this time around, they're all alone. They're not outsourcing to another company, and their team is split in half between Town and Pokemon. I'm not saying this is excusable. I'm just stating the facts. I think it's worth mentioning, and just to show how bad people want this, that Twitter took off the other day as well for this Chinese bootleg app, which is shown to have much better animations. Especially the main thing that was shown off was this Charizard versus this Charizard doing a flamethrower out of his shoulder. Then it was revealed that clearly these are altered animations from Pokken Tournament, and also the Chinese knockoff bootleg whatever app was also probably taking some information from users. So, you know, the majority of these criticisms could be seen as nitpicks, especially with the stuff I see on Reddit where they're just showing off bad keyframes of animations, as well as the reuse of animation, which is actually a very common practice in the animation industry. Then people say, well, you're just nitpicking, and then they get defensive because it's like, they said they were gonna work on this and took out the thing I liked just to make that better. So I can see where they're coming from, and I can see why it does look like nitpicking at face value. The thing is, Game Freak undeniably has to cut corners because Nintendo needs a hard-hitting release this Christmas. With the delay of Animal Crossing, there is no way in hell that Pokemon can be delayed. And the fact that there's even a special Switch Lite Pokemon edition, who knows how long they had that decided that they were going to have a crazy Pokemon Switch Lite bundle for the holiday season. And if Game Freak were to cut corners, then I would be happy to have the corners cut in terms of reuse animation than in terms of the actual gameplay. Now, am I defending it and saying that you can't be mad? No, because EA gets all the time for doing this, for pushing their studios way too far in order to hit a deadline. If Game Freak is pushed to this limit, can't they just reallocate people from the town side of their development team onto the Pokemon side of the development team? Here's the thing, they could have. We don't know. And that's the main thing here. Yeah, there's a lot of corner cutting that is apparent. We don't know how many new Pokemon there's going to be. We don't know how good the story is going to be, since that was also stated to be one of the main focuses of this game. We don't know how the post game is going to be. We don't know if there's RPG elements still included, such as breeding and IVs. And this is the main point I get to every time I talk about Pokemon. We just don't know yet. You can't just dismiss it yet because we don't know anything about the main gameplay. And it's just really annoying when people get put down for just saying that they like certain aspects of the game, or people that have been constantly pointing out in my last video that all the negatives in it makes this game completely unredeemable. I even caught some comments in my last video saying that they're not going to buy the game because they just don't know. They can't take the risk. It looks bad, so it might be bad. They can't take the risk if it's going to be good or not, and that's the problem. That's a fair point. That's a fair point. Oh wait, you wait for the game to come out and then you look at a review like the normal. That's what's the problem here. If the game comes out and it's trash, go ahead, trash it. You can't just dismiss the gameplay yet or the game as a whole. It's disappointing the cut in animations as well as assets and the removal of the national decks. And hey, I do my fair share of complaining on this channel that you should totally sub to, and it's all under the guise of I just want the thing I love to be the best it can be. Side note, I constantly have people pointing out Battle Revolution to me saying that it's a 12-year-old game, and it has way better animation, so Sword and Shield should have equal if not more animation, since again it's 12 years old. The argument only makes sense for things like frame rate or textures and stuff like that, not for actual animations. The main draw of the game was the animations. It was criticizing for having less content than a game like Pokemon Coliseum if you didn't have a DS with Diamond and Pearl. So again, they cut content to make the animations as nice as possible. Am I defending Game Freak for the recycled animations? No, because I think that it could still be better. I just think that it's a stupid comparison, especially when people say, oh, but it's 12 years old, so Sword and Shield should be way better animation. A delay would be nice, and I'm defending Game Freak in terms of being called lazy, and I think that the main entity that should be getting a lot of flack is Nintendo for forcing the release to get that big holiday title out. Hey, we got some more Breath of the Wild 2 news, which I'm always excited to talk about. In the last DoDump, we talked about how Nintendo put up job listings for level designers as well as 3D asset creation specifically for dungeons. Yes. I mentioned how we have to probably wait longer than we thought for these games since the job listings ended late September, but I can wait though. This is me waiting for Breath of the Wild 1 after the original announcement trailer back in 2014 when I bought my Wii U. Maybe we don't have to wait so long though for Breath of the Wild 2, yeah! Monolith Soft, the team behind the Xenoblade Chronicles series, actually helped Nintendo for Breath of the Wild 1, and now are on board to help Nintendo for Breath of the Wild 2. In fact, they're opening an entire new studio in Tokyo just to work on Breath of the Wild 2 now. We could get this game sooner than we thought. It took 4 years for Breath of the Wild 1, but now they have an engine foundation, and they don't have to develop things for 2 sets of hardware. Who knows, we even could get this game in 2021, or get a bunch of more news about the game summer 2020, which is just a year from now. All speculation, of course, but I really can't wait for Breath of the Wild 2, and I'm always excited to talk about it. And I think this completely debunks anything that we thought about of this being Breath of the Wild 1.5, since they're getting all these new people and an entire team involved. Oh my god, this is gonna be awesome. Bonus story, since we're talking about Zelda, this grandma apparently took over 750 hours to beat Twilight Princess in over 9 years. I didn't believe it, but then I saw footage and saw that she was playing the Wii version, and boom, motion controls. This is why it took her so long. Someone get her the GameCube or the HD version. Bless her heart. And what a wholesome way to end this episode. Hey, you know what else would be super wholesome? Helping me get to 2,000 subs.